Or Unlocking the Truth Inside an Anorexic Mind. And I'm very excited because it was published in December, jumped to an Amazon bestseller, and has now sold over 3,000 copies. So, yay! So the reason I wrote the book in the first place was, I think, out of frustration because of all the stigmas and assumptions made about eating disorders. And I wasn't, at the time, able to communicate what I was feeling. I mean, I was a child and I barely knew it myself, so I couldn't explain to people what was going on in my mind. So then after the eating disorder, when I sat down to write the book, I thought this is my chance to try to get people to really see it from the inside out, which I think is really essential. So I wanted to get the reader into my mind because the brain of somebody who's underweight is compromised. The actual structure changes, and they can see this on testing. So your thinking is altered. And I think a lot of people don't understand that that's not a choice. The more your brain gets altered, the more your weight changes, the more you are driven into this eating disorder, the more you are propelled into it, and it just snowballs out of control. So I attempt to pull you into my mind and have you experience these distorted thoughts and behaviors with me, so that if you have a friend or a loved one with an eating disorder, you might be able to better support them. They might be able to get better treatment, because something that I was lacking a lot in my recovery was compassion and validation. You know, it was more just like, just eat, just get, why are you thinking that way? Think a different way. Okay, you know. So I thought that was really important, that empathy for people who are suffering. They need that. It's just so frustrating not to be able to communicate. And one of the ways we do communicate is through distorted behaviors. So disordered behaviors, rather. So my eating disorder symptoms began when I was 8 years old, but the seeds of an eating disorder really could be seen when I was in preschool. Quite young, and I have to wonder that if anybody had really looked closely enough to read those signs and symptoms, or even knew that they could exist in somebody so young, I wonder if there was an intervention, if I would have developed the eating disorder at all. And you know, thank goodness there's so much more awareness today, so maybe that can happen for other people. And at the time, I was very young to develop an eating disorder at the time. That is unfortunately not the case anymore. Younger and younger people are starting to diet and developing eating disorders, so 8 is unfortunately very, very common nowadays. I struggled for over a decade before hitting rock bottom. And by the time I graduated college, I was really on my deathbed. It looked like I was not going to make it. And it came down to, for me, 3 choices. I could either go on the way I was going, and you know, until it eventually killed me. I could die, because I was contemplating suicide at the time, to end it, or I could live. Third one seems the most terrifying, honestly, because I didn't know what that meant. I knew that I didn't want the first one. I could not continue on the way I was going. It was no way to live. And I had been in the hospital already in 1999, and then again in 2000, and I just said, I can't go through this again. So that's out. So that left me with life or death. And you know, I went back and forth between the two quite a bit, but eventually I got really curious. As terrifying as this unknown life thing was, I was really curious to see what it was about, because from the inside looking out, it looked like people were really living, like really enjoying their lives, doing something meaningful, having a purpose. They were passionate and you know, having fun, and it looked great. I wondered if something like that was ever possible for me, if I could ever actually do anything meaningful. So something very, very deep inside of me said that I don't think my time's up yet. I think I might have more to this life of mine if I could pull through this. So it was enough to get me to start the recovery process. Now, the first time I was in the hospital, I had not made that decision, and I was forced into the hospital, and it was a horrible experience. They treated us like cattle, basically, the hospital staff. It was, we were all expected to be exactly the same. There was no individualization with us. The worst was expected of all of us. It was, eat this, you have this much time, and then back in your room, and that was it. And so, speaking of compassion and validation, it even seemed, to me, it seemed like they were treating us like we brought this on ourselves, that it was our fault that we were in the hospital. And the nurses sort of, I felt like, oh, I'm sorry, am I taking up your time? Like they had better things to do than deal with this kid who wasn't eating. So it was incredibly enraging, and what I did was ate until they let me go, or until my insurance ran out, still terribly underweight, but enough so that they could send me out, and relapsed, because I was like, good, now I'm out, I can do what I want. The second time after I graduated college, I relapsed worse than I had ever been before, and that was when I made this decision to choose life. And then came the hard part. Then I had to put on the weight and really mean it and do it this time. And it is this horrible irony that you have to gain the weight before you can receive the therapy, because your brain is altered. You can't, there's no rationalization to take in any sort of therapy. So you just have to face what's, usually the worst fear of an anorexic is just eating and gaining weight. And you just have to do it and trust that it's going to be okay. And it's traumatizing. And that for me was the worst part. You're going against everything your gut and your brain is saying, and you're just doing it. And of course that helps if you have a staff that's a little more compassionate and understands what you're going through. And the second time around, thank goodness, I got more of that. And there were some more choices, and you could even choose between this or this and what you wanted to eat. We were treated a little bit more like humans, and it was still really, really hard, but I think that made a big difference for me. Yeah. So after the inpatient, after I was an inpatient, I went into a day program, and I think that I wouldn't have been able to fully recover had I not gone into this day program. It was 5 days a week, all day, and I wouldn't have been able to keep up my recovery on my own. You really have to be supervised for a good long time. And I look at it like, if the inpatient program taught me how to eat, the day program taught me how to live. They really started teaching us how to integrate into society more, how we watched movies and we went shopping, and they gave us tennis lessons along with all the other therapies that we were getting. And I went through the motions completely dispassionately. I was still depressed. I couldn't see any reason to have any interest in any of this, but it was like fake it till you make it, I guess. I just went through the motions until, I started getting a little more interest, and I was able to receive a little more therapy. And what really made my recovery complete, the only thing that got me to real full recovery, was finding my own passion. And that was so, so important, and I recommend it so highly. I've written articles about it for others who are suffering from eating disorders, about finding who you are beyond the eating disorder, and what sparks a life inside of you, and a light inside of you. And so I discovered massage therapy. I went and got my license, and discovered how wonderful it felt to help other people and not be the one that was helped all the time, and incredibly empowering and gratifying that was. And I got into a romantic relationship, and that took a lot of time and passion, and I found a passion for writing, so I started writing, and I started hosting a YouTube channel where I put videos with that teach self-care and wellness. And for the past 4 years, I've had a child, so that's very time-consuming. So all of these things, who has time to think about weight and diet and food? Like, it just seems so, why would you, it just seems insignificant when you have all those other things to fill your life that are healthy and good, and to be able to live meaningfully that way. It really takes the place. It takes a long time to get there, but it's really so worth it. So very worth it. So today I still, hey, Mom and Dad, you made it. Hey. A round of applause to you. I think the only person who has it worse than the sufferer are the parents. Like I can't, because now I'm a parent and I don't even know how they did it. So anyway, so today there are still remnants of the disorder. So I still have some anxiety over high-calorie foods. I still have some distorted body image. I don't quite see myself the way others do. I still have a tendency towards perfectionism, which very often goes hand in hand with anorexia. So long after the fact, and I think that it's just because I had the illness for so long that those neural pathways just have not been overridden by the healthy me at this point. However, it's like a voice in the other room. It's dim, it's in the background, and it can't pull me down. I can always overpower it. And the way I see it is kind of like laundry. Like I hate laundry, you know, like I really hate doing laundry. And but I know that I need to because I know it's healthy for me to wear clean clothes, and I have a responsibility for others who I come in contact with, you know. So I kind of see it like I have an obligation to keep myself healthy. And I also have an obligation to others now, my friends and my family and my viewers and my readers, and you know, it's important, and it's so much better to live, to really live, and to live that way. And I just want to end with saying that recovery is possible, and not only that, with the right treatment, it is probable. The earlier the intervention, the more likelihood of success. However, it is never too late. And I am, thank goodness, living proof of that.